Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I'm Ann Christensen, a licensed prayer practitioner here at Light on the Mountains. And now it's time to take a deep breath and go within. I know that there is one universal spirit, one infinite intelligence, one divine presence, one creative force. That force, that presence is all there is. It is here within each one of us and within everything in the universe. And it is love and joy and beauty. It is peace and harmony, order and balance, goodness, wisdom, intelligence, infinite abundance, and perfect health. And I know that it is right here for each one of us. And I give thanks for this wonderful philosophy and for our community, for Light on the Mountains Spiritual Center. And I give thanks for each and every person who helps to make this place the wonderful place that it is. And I especially give thanks for our magnificent music and with R.L. and Max, and I give thanks for Reverend John and his always perfect message, and for everyone else who is here today and who is out there on the internet. And together we say, and so it is. Now, yesterday was the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. And for me, that's very important, so you will have to listen to a little of that today. So I am going to first just read from the April Science of Mind magazine, and this was for Friday, the day before the Earth Day, but it had to be. I mean, to me, it said it all. And it's called Broken Open by Beauty. Radical presence is born out of love. That is a quote from Lama Rod Owens. And the quote from Ernest Holmes, we can so train our ears to listen to the divine harmony within that we shall reproduce its melody, rhythm, and beauty in all ways. And here is what I forgot to write down her name. Louise Talon wrote, and I highly recommend this month's readings. To be fully, vulnerably human is to be broken open by a rainbow, by the golden light of early morning in the treetops, by a heron in the creek slowly dancing in the rising mist, by tail-flicking squirrels, by gentle rain beating on your hair and face. To be truly, messily human is to be present to it all, to love it all, to revel in the mystery of all, to listen for the divine harmony that exists in, through, and as all things. If we can stand in that radical presence born out of love, then every moment is a revelation. Every moment a chance for newness, for wonder, for awe. We spend our lives in busyness trying to figure out how to do it better, how to win friends and influence people, but we spend little time just being. When was the last time you just experienced life without labeling it? When was the last time you were broken open by a rainbow? When was the last time you laughed until you cried? Today, right now, put down this reading and experience life. Let your soul slow dance with delight. And her affirmation for today, today I let my soul be broken up by the beauty in the world. I am a radical presence born out of love. And I wanted to finish with a prayer for the earth. And this is from the Interfaith Power and Light, a wonderful organization that has been doing environmental work for a very, very long time through many faiths. And actually, one of them spoke at St. Thomas within the last 6 months, and she was wonderful. And here's the prayer: we hold the earth. We hold brothers and sisters who suffer from storms and droughts intensified by climate change. We hold all species that suffer. We hold world leaders delegated to make decisions for life. We pray that the web of life may be mended through courageous actions to limit carbon emissions. We pray for right actions for adaptation and mitigation to help our already suffering Earth community. We pray that love and wisdom might inspire my actions and our actions as communities, so that we may, with integrity, look into the eyes of brothers and sisters and all beings and truthfully say, we are doing our part to care for them and the future of the children. May love transform us and our world with new steps toward life. Amen. And now it is time to read our affirmation for April, and it's right here on your insert in red. And let's do it together, please. I embrace my unique expression through a perfect vulnerability and healthful boundaries. And now it's time for wonderful music.
Yay, thank you, Ann. Good morning, everyone. A thought of the month. It's been a while. It's so good to be back. I've been stalking you all on watching the live streams. It's great to see that the world continues here. Well, boy, that's delightful. And thanks to David and Ali and to Paul and John, who were all part of making music here while I was away. It makes me feel very comfortable to know that music continues to happen here. So I was driving down the road this morning. By the way, Ann, Caritas and I were fortunate to be able to be a part of the Earth Day celebration yesterday down in Haley. We got to stand outside and sing in the snow. And it was great. It was great fun. When we got to Welcome Spring, that was one of the songs we sang. I saw a few tears, but it was still great. So I was driving up this morning, and often I don't have an idea about what I'm going to say before I stand up here, which is obvious. But I was wondering, I thought, golly, it feels important to be back here and have something to say. And I was wondering what it was going to be, and then I saw this car coming towards me with its lights flashing. And then I noticed there was a car on my side of the road on the other lane with its lights flashing, and I realized it had stopped, and I went, oh, I know what this is. And sure enough, there were 5 elk waiting to cross the road, and very kind citizens in our community had stopped, and then I pulled up and blocked my lane as well, so that the elk could cross. And it took them a while to determine that this really was an okay thing, and there was a truck coming that didn't make them too comfortable yet. And the truck caught on and started to slow down. And as it did, the lead guy came out. And the others followed behind. And one of them turned to look at us, and I thought it was a thank you. Or why are you stopping in the middle of the road? I don't know. But I started to think about, I don't know, our world's been pretty noisy about how we bump into one another. How we... I don't know, little things set us off and make us angry, and noise happens. And, well, I don't know, my friends in the other cars around me this morning gave me hope. We can stop to let 5 elk cross the road. We can stop for a few minutes to figure out what a neighbor needs and be helpful. We can stop for a few minutes just because the sunset is pretty. We can change our plans. I think about the number of times that I say, oh, I would love to do that, but I already have plans. We can change our plans when we're needed. And we can also do our friends a favor by letting them know when we could use a helping hand. And most of us are better at being helpful than acknowledging when we could use that helping hand. Look at all the nods going on out here. Yes, I know. And sometimes the gift is letting someone else help you with the project. I'm glad the elk made it across the road this morning.
Well, welcome back, R.L. and Max. They've had many adventures since we've last seen you both. Yes. You survived Disneyland. You did go to Disneyland, yes. Didn't you? I just think Disneyland is way too much to even consider it these days. It's just, anyways. Hi everyone at home. So, thank you for coming today. Yes, it is spring. I know because we only have 3 feet of snow instead of 7. So that means we're on our way. As some of you know, we had an emergency shoveling of the snow off the roof, so that's kind of making it more challenging. And it's not inexpensive to do that. I just want you to know. It's just a little sobering, but we did it, and it's great. Read an interesting little article this week, through Axios. Are any of you familiar with Axios? It's an online news source, and I think they really do their best to just give you bullet points of things that are happening with very little opinion. In fact, when I get the emails, it really is in bullet points, and it doesn't expand on it. It says, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening, people are saying this, saying the other. And what I found very interesting in this particular subject this week was talking about, just the social change that we're all experiencing in these last few years, and saying that the majority of people just want to get on with their lives. The majority of people are more than willing to let someone who has a different opinion get on with their lives in the way that they want to get on with their lives. And that, they want to have homes, they want their kids to go to college, they want to have work that is fulfilling, but yet we're all, as we look in the media, have this vision of people acting badly. That, we look at our elected officials, it seems like there's almost this feeling that they have to perform in one very opposite extreme way. And so this article is just talking about how we all have a lot of questions and things to do in this time of history and decisions to make, but at the same time, it seems like it's either you put your head in the sand and try to go on your way, or the other option is something very extreme and to act out in public and do ridiculously silly things. And so where does that put us? And I think that's part of our job, is to how do we embrace, contribute to a significant change in this time of history, and do it as grown adults. Do it in I know, that's a lot to ask. Yeah. Do it in a way that's respectful. Do it in a way to say that even though I feel I've made a decision for myself, I don't have to have that decision be made for you as well. So it seems to be an interesting little thing here. So we're going to talk about this through something else that interesting happened to me this week, and we're going to talk a bit about this little flyer. I've been invited to participate in a clergy panel discussion of this movie called Spiritual Audacity, the Abraham Joshua Herschel story. Who is familiar with that name, first of all? So, first of all, he was a very big name in the 60s, walking literally arm in arm with Martin Luther King Jr. and the various things that happened on the bridge and all that. He grew up in Germany and was offered a position in a college here just in time before Jews were no longer allowed to leave. And in fact, most of his family was killed in the Holocaust. So it's a very interesting, rich life he had. And there is this amazing 1-hour documentary that is now actually on PBS that you can stream for free. But part of this is that we're going to have a public viewing that we're going to be a part of, and it's not just the viewing, because yes, we can all stream. We've gotten used to saying, I don't need to leave home and go anywhere, haven't we? It's like, I haven't put on shoes for a week. I'm staying home. The important thing I think about this event will be the opportunity for us to have a community dialogue, which I believe community dialogues are at the heart of what we have to challenge ourselves to do right now. And to get over ourselves and to get over our own judgments. So I was a little surprised, and I shouldn't have been surprised, that the faith community in the Valley that's spearheading this is in Haley, the Seventh-day Adventist church. And so when I first got that email and call, and I just first, let me apologize up front, and I just want to say that even I am not above healing. I just want to say that. Even I can actually get over myself on some days. Not every day, on some days. And let me just say, I'm not, as a more progressive minister who also happens to be gay, I'm not often embraced by traditional Christian organizations. Let me just put that out there. So I mean, the first thought when they reached out to me, I thought, don't they know? Is it a bait and switch? Is it an April Fool's joke? Is it? And I went and met with them and a couple other representatives, and they were lovely. Absolutely lovely. And one of the first things in the conversation I had with the minister there, he says, we just have to get politics out of faith communities. We have to get back to what it is that you believe, and you believe what you want to believe, and I'll believe what I want to believe, but embrace it with your full heart and let that run your life, and we need to get out of all this ridiculousness. And one of the reasons that they are hosting this is a step in that direction. How can we have a conversation with, and it's going to be at the community campus, so it's big. Room for a lot of people, that people can ask questions, that Tony Evans is going to be the moderator for the question and answer period. So I know there's a lot to do in the Valley every week, and I'm saying this has to rise to the top of what you are going to do in May. And it is May 16th. So I know there's book clubs, there's potlucks, there's things over here to do. And I know it's difficult to say which is the thing that rises to the top. This has to rise to the top. Yes, you can watch the documentary on PBS for free. But what you won't be able to get is that dialogue. And so what I expect is that there might be some very different and seemingly opposing opinions that are expressed, but it will be done and received and discussed in a very respectful way. What a concept. I mean, I'd pay to go, it's free, but you know what I mean? It's just like we have been so trained to go immediately to outrage. We have been trained to immediately act out inappropriately in public. And guess what? We're not going to do that there. And what if people are inspired by this dialogue, and again, you may not agree with a lot that's said there, that you may, when you are tempted to be outraged in public, might say, maybe I shouldn't do that. I mean, just, isn't that kind of like, what? Someone internally is going to go to outrage and decide to pull back and say that's actually inappropriate, and I can be a wholesome presence right here and to recognize the presence of Spirit and the divine right where I am in spite of my knee-jerk reaction to go to outrage. So these are the types of things, and we say, what can a person do? These are the types of things that we can do to participate in dialogue, respectful dialogues, and to know that we're not going to all come out on the same page other than I respect you, you respect me type of thing. So this is what this is about. And I want to talk about this a little bit more in some major points because, again, I would say do watch this at home and watch it again in public. It's something that you actually need to watch more than once to really kind of take it in. Because I was just thinking, God, I should be taking notes for this. And I thought, no, you shouldn't be taking notes for this. You just need to be present with it. And it's online for right now. You can view it again. So it's one of those things that you just have to like watch multiple times and to take in. And some things that I pulled out from it is that as we were talking when we met the clergy, my comment was saying, well, what'd you think, John, about this thing? I said, my take on this was that it's not just a documentary about history, it is a lesson how history repeats itself. It's kind of tempting to look back, especially at that period in Germany in the 30s and early 40s and the Holocaust, and say, gee, that was terrible. I'm so glad that we worked our way through that, and it's not like that anymore. But it's kind of not. In fact, in the many conversations I've had with our favorite rabbi, Rabbi Robbie, if you're watching Rabbi Robbie, she says that as not only as a Jew, but as a rabbi, really aware that it seems like anti-Semitism has a spike about every 80 years. I think that's interesting. I had never had that pointed out to me. She says and says we're in another spike. So when you kind of look at it to when things were heating up in Europe, and specifically in Germany, it's just as they were starting to heat up. It's not like one day you're quote-unquote normal, and the next day you go to the Holocaust. Just that suddenly ramping up of the idea of the other. Of we have problems here, and the problems has to be because of them, and if we got rid of them, our problems would be better. So that's how this works, and sometimes in human nature, because we just can't get over the fact that these problems that have been created, we've all contributed. We've all had a hand in it. So it means we all need to look at ourselves and how we come together to solve these things, as opposed to say, they are the problem, first let's marginalize them, and then let's actually get rid of them, and everything will be wonderful if we get rid of them. And so that's where we are today. It's anti-Semitism, it's racism, it's homophobia, all this group of these are the people we need to get rid of. And like I said, who ever thought that it would be if we only got rid of the drag queens? I mean, no, really. I mean, think about that. I mean, that's kind of a hard case to make, isn't it? I mean, so that shows you that it would be funny if it wasn't so appalling. Like, gee, who can we pick this time to be the scapegoat? Oh, I know. So we're in one of those spikes, and it's great to watch this documentary and look for the clues of what was there and what is now. And what I really loved about him, he is a rabbi, and I am so impressed with anyone that fully embraces their identity and their faith, even if it's a faith that's not mine. In a way that is affirming, a way that is accepting of others, and even saying, well, I don't agree with what you're doing, but go ahead and do it, kind of thing. So I just really appreciate him. I mean, he's so founded in his faith and belief. And during the 60s civil rights movement, he was often referred to people as the prophet of the civil rights movement. And of course, it's interesting how they, in the documentary, defined prophet. Of course, I don't know, I hear the word prophet, and I think you're going to get out the cards and tell me what's going to happen next week. You know, like, you can tell what's going to happen. In this context, and he even wrote a book about the Old Testament prophets, a prophet is someone who tells the truth. Now, I know we often see truth differently, in a sense, but at a certain level, especially when we talk about the level of spiritual qualities, the truth is always the truth. And as we have dialogues with people, I think the challenge is kind of boil down to the point where we come to agreement and know that there is a separation at some point, which is fine. But in a sense, he says during the civil rights movement, the truth was the equality of all, basically. And all the work that was being done to make our society more equal. So in a sense, there's that essence of, as a prophet of, that is the truth. In a sense, you might see it a little bit differently, but at the core truth, unchangeable, is that everyone is perfect, whole, and complete, and equal at the level of spirit, and our work is to make that manifest in our world. So that's when you core down to the truth here. So I took some mental notes. Like I said I'm not going to take notes here because I got to really look at it. And there's 3 different things that I have been thinking a lot about from him. So, brought up something that I hear a lot, have always heard a lot. So we look at our world. We look at our community. And we see often mayhem. Turn on the news, you think like, how could this happen? And people who have, especially, I guess, a more traditional idea of what God is, meaning kind of a separate entity out there that kind of has the marionette strings and working things around the world. And he says, well, how could that person allow these things to happen? Don't we hear that a lot? And I've heard people who identify as being an atheist will say, well, I can't believe in a God because if there was, he, and it's always he, would not allow these terrible things to happen. But this is a kind of a paraphrase from the movie. It says, where is God? How could he, she, it allow so much pain, suffering, and pointless death to occur? And in this quote, Rabbi Herschel imagines God, and his response is, well, where have you been? In other words, God is saying, not where have I been, where have you been? Where have you not been showing up, in a sense? So I was raised in Christianity saying God helps those who help themselves. In other words, as I wrote in my blog, I don't believe this concept of the divine, regardless of how you see it, whether it's a separate entity, whether it's something like how we teach that it is something within all things. I don't believe that God is supposed to be the playground monitor. I don't believe it is an entity that says, okay, you've crossed the line. It's not an entity like all you who are parents that at some point you had to pull your kids apart because they were literally going to kill themselves over, who knows, a cupcake or something. You said, okay, enough is enough. Go to your separate rooms. That's not God's job. The way that it works is that it works through us. The way that it works is, especially as we think of, well, I want to pray to that entity over there, and I want him to make my neighbor nicer, or my kids behave, or however you want to look at it. It doesn't work that way. Prayer is answered, I believe, through inspirational ideas that you have a choice to act upon. That's why sometimes as we get answered prayer, and the answer seems too challenging, our next prayer is, do you have a plan B? Because that one's a little bit too hard. So it's like, I gave it to you. Here's the direction you can take. And it's like, I didn't really have that in mind, kind of thing. But that's the thing, is if he imagines God asking you, well, where have you been? I sent you the inspiration. I gave you a core idea. Your next door neighbor is the same kind of consciousness as you. You could have buddied up with him or her. You have all these opportunities. So where have you been? So that's the question to ask ourselves. Quote, where have we been? And I'm not saying that we haven't done anything. But when we look at the world, look at our day-to-day life, ask ourselves, as we are judging everyone else, how are we showing up each and every day? Again, we have been trained to go to outrage. We have been trained to throw fits on airplanes. We have been trained to just stand in line somewhere and just like, I want to see the manager. This is just too much for me. I've been in line for 5 minutes here. Don't you know who I am? Yeah, they do. So the question is, we're so concerned with where is the divine and how are other people acting. What are you modeling as you go through your day-to-day life? We often talk about the big things. Yes, if I was there at the Holocaust, I would say no and hide people. It's like, but what are you doing at the line at the DMV? That's what I'm concerned with. It escalates to those bigger things. But if you can't handle the smaller things, how do you think you're going to handle the bigger things? It's like, oh, I'll be a good person once the big challenge, but meanwhile, I'll just be mean and nasty in the line? I mean, it doesn't work that way. It happens in increments. You have to take a larger presence with you wherever you go, and then those bigger things come, and you're ready for them. You have to train in your day-to-day life not to be in continual outrage. Because again, there is plenty of online training to be outraged 24/7. To the point now, even if you are outraged only 12 hours out of 24, you think you're doing pretty good. No, you're not. We have to retrain ourselves. Again, like the Axios article said, we just want to live our lives, but basically that means I don't want to be in a state of continuous outrage. So even when you see something on the news that is like breaks your heart, even then don't go to outrage. Go to prayer. And the prayer means the thing that even beyond what the situation is, that the divine is here somewhere. I can't see it, it doesn't make sense, but I'm choosing not to be in outrage. So, and when you're tempted to do that, just think of his words. God's saying, well, where are you? You know, don't call on me until you're willing to show up on your own. Remember that. Second thing. Very interesting quote from the movie. He said, do you look at your life seeking to get as much as you can, or do you live in gratitude knowing that you are called to be in service in return? I want to read this again. You know how you're watching these things, you go, ooh. Yeah, it's kind of, ooh. No, certainly he wasn't talking about me, was he? Let me just read this again. Do you look at life seeking to get as much as you can, or do you live in gratitude knowing that you are called to be in service in return? So I'm not saying that we should become Buddhist monks and throw everything away and get a bowl to beg for food or anything like that. But I think from the New Testament, it's not money is the root of all evil, it's the love of it. In other words, that you bring it up to something that it really isn't meant to be. Just saying, we're in the physical world. It is about stuff to a certain extent. I like that we have a nice building. I like that we have heating that works. I like that on Tuesday our dishwasher will be new and it will again be working. You know what I mean? It just we like they say you can't have nice things. You can have nice things, actually. And there's nothing wrong with having nice things. But suddenly when you make that the thing, that is the pinnacle of your achievement. In fact, this last week in our class, the class I'm teaching is basically the power of prayer and how do we form not only affirmations, but intentions that aren't just so thing-based, but what's the larger thing that we're seeking? And we had a great conversation about cars. Like, what do you think, when you want to buy a car, what are you looking for? And how, in some instances, it might be in some way that you feel more worthy if you have a nice car, as opposed to, gee, it'd just be fun to have a nice car. Again, nothing wrong with a nice car, but you put a personality thing around it. So in this, are you seeking to get more just because you're trying to cover something that feels like it's missing? Instead of going to what really seems to be missing, trying to cover it up. You know, it's kind of like constantly having a sugar high. It's like, gee, I'll have another donut, and once the sugar wears off, rather than thinking, gee, maybe a nutrition plan would be a better way to go, no, another donut. Again, nothing wrong with donuts. But you just kind of think, well, what's really important here? And that even in a challenging world, you can be in gratitude even when a lot of things are not going all that well. And that, again, back to, so the first thing was just to not be in constant outrage, but the next step of that is to go out each and every day and to know that to a certain extent, you're here to be in service. And this is not saying volunteerism. Volunteerism is amazing and wonderful, and it doesn't mean that, gee, I need to sign up for 40 hours working for the office at Reverend John's. And it's like, no, that, even though you would be welcome. But what I'm saying is that is one aspect of it. Service is a state of consciousness that you take with you. That it's also knowing that in talking about abundance and supply, that this giving and receiving actually is this kind of thing that just works together. That as you are in a consciousness that I am here to give on different levels, that what I need just has a way of showing up. I have found that. In fact, I'm just kind of almost shocked some things that show up in a good way. But we get into that fear, like, well, I have to get my own, and then maybe I could be of service, as opposed to it kind of works all at the same time. So especially in today's world, it's almost a unique and novel idea to say that as crazy as all these people are, I'm showing up in service. Doesn't mean you become a doormat. It doesn't mean that you let people verbally abuse you. It means that you stand in a different consciousness that I am here to be part of a greater solution and healing. And as I've pointed out to many people over the years, if you find yourself in one of those weird conversations that have a lot of conflict in it, it is interesting how you can change it almost instantaneously by changing what's going on inside of you. That if you can challenge yourself to go to conflict to service, how sometimes the other person visually on their face almost are confused and don't know what to do anymore. Because you're not showing up in outrage. You're showing up differently. It's like, wait a second, you just changed the rules here. I wanted to really get down to it. I wanted to mud wrestle here. It's like, I'm not interested in that right now. Play with that. I mean, again, you think, well, how can I do it when I feel emotionally under attack, whatever? That's the time to do it. That's the time that you see how it really works, because when you find yourself in this situation, you say, I'm here grounded in service. Again, I'm not going to take abuse, but I'm certainly not going to respond in abuse. And like I said, play with it. It's amazing how your interactions can change almost instantaneously. So regardless of what you're doing, show up in service. And one of the last things here, and this is from his book, God in Search of Man, A Philosophy of Judaism. He says, this is the quote, "The plea is not to obey what he wills," meaning God, the guy, "The plea is not to obey what he wills, but to do what he is." Again, the plea is not to obey what he wills, but to do what he is. What does that mean? So I have found that on a very surface level of many spiritual practices and religions, and I'm not just saying the ones that you don't agree with, there's all these rules, supposedly. You know what I mean? It's like, you have to do this, or you would never do this when Mercury's in retrograde. Kind of like, what does that have to do with anything? But we have these rules, and it's like being a letter of the law kind of person. It's like, here are the rules up here, and that's what you do, and somehow, if you just do those things, even if you're doing them with inner outrage, you'll be okay. But here's the interesting thing, as I, over the years, talk in interfaith groups with my colleagues, and yes, each religion has its own take and its own story. But again, the further we drill down into this, our beliefs start to come together. And again, it's not the beliefs necessarily about a prophet or Jesus or any of that. It's like about things like forgiveness and unconditional love and the perfection of spirit. These are the places where we start to meet that it's actually healthy for them to be expressed in any number of ways. That's what I think the gift of these multiple religions are, is like, I can take the concept of forgiveness and express it through Christianity. You can express it through Judaism. You can express it through a new thought. You can express it through Islam. I just think that is a bonus, that it gets to be expressed uniquely and differently, as opposed to saying, this is the one way. Here, see, there's the rule. I just put it up on the wall. You got to do that. So him, as a rabbi, is saying, don't look at the rules. He's saying, be spirit, be God. And last week we talked a bit about spiritual qualities, and I still have this list of spiritual qualities in the other room, and things like freedom, forgiveness, generosity, prosperity, strength, tenderness, to be these things. Again, rather than to aspire necessarily to just have something, but to embody something deeper, to be the spirit of the truth rather than the letter of the law. And I think there is a great call for that today. In any of the dialogues that we have, is to meet on this level of existence, rather than, well, this is what I believe, this is what you believe, and then this is how we could never see eye to eye, so to speak. We can if you bring it down to things on here. So again, I guess the subtopic today, when you're feeling, I don't know, the temptation to be outraged, take a picture of this and bring it up on your phone. What would be the word here that would be the perfect antidote to today's form of outrage? And I'm not saying that, gee, my brother-in-law really could use this, and yeah, number 10. This is what he could really use, number 10. No, this is for you. You may share this with others, but it's not like that passive-aggressive thing to your friend or sibling, like, oh, here, I think you could use this. No, and I'm not doing this for you in that way. We can all use this. Bring it up on your phone. If you must put something on the wall, put on this. This is a direction of what it is you should be thinking about in a way of embodying. As we are in great social change right now, these are the places to start and to emanate from. These are the things that can bring us together in agreement as opposed to disagreement. So that is the challenge of today. Don't be outraged. Challenge yourself to show up in service and have real conversations. If you're confused how to do this, come to the movie. In fact, you're going to get so tired of me talking about this the next 3 weeks. It's just come. We're this far from renting a bus and coming around to your neighborhoods and saying, just get on the bus. I'm eating dinner. There's a sandwich on the bus. Just come. So to me, it's that important of a step, especially as we are kind of coming back into the world after this kind of few years of weirdness, that we have isolated ourselves even more. The theater's big. If you need to sit 20 rows from someone, that option is available for you. So challenge yourself to step out in service and to openness and to spiritual truth. So with that, I just want to close with one of my favorite poems by Mother Teresa. She says, people are often unreasonable and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you are kind, people may accuse you of ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. If you are honest, people may cheat you. Be honest anyway. If you find happiness, people may be jealous. Be happy anyway. The good you do today may be forgotten tomorrow. Do good anyway. Give the world the best you have, and it may never be enough. Give your best anyway. For you see, in the end, it is between you and God. It was never between you and them anyway. So, let's just take this within and give thanks for spring. Let's give thanks for vanishing snow. Let's just give thanks for each other and the opportunity to come here together in service of each other. Let us give gratitude in our opportunity to be in service to those with whom we don't agree. And in this Thanksgiving, we allow ourselves to be aware of a larger truth within us, that there is a perfection and wholeness that lays within what we call the kingdom of heaven. It is our guide. It is always there to show us our way. And when we are, in a sense, tempted to look elsewhere, we bring that back to center. What is my work in the world to do here today? How am I to show up? How am I to be kind? How am I to understand others? That direction is within us all. So we affirm that possibility. We affirm a greater possibility in healing in our nation and our world, and we know it starts with us, and we are on board. So we live in thanksgiving, we live in healing, and we live in truth. And we allow this affirmation to be released into spirit, into the universe. We allow it to let go. We release our attachment to it and allow it to show up in the physical in its perfect form. And with that, we are so grateful. And so it is.